2, 1. Go right ahead, Sister Queen.
Revolutionary greetings, everyone. Thank you for joining us for our Revolutionary African Woman Chat. And we have a special program today. It's not going to be our typical 30-minute chat. This one is, again, another one of our long chats where we are going to be honoring Kwame Ture. Kwame's birthday is the 29th of June, and we have started a tradition of honoring Africa Youth Day and Kwame Ture Day in this month. And so we wanted to get an opportunity to acknowledge our revolutionary comrade, Kwame Ture, and his contributions to the Pan-African movement. So we have special co-host here this time. We have Dr. Chinzira Kahina, who is with us, a revolutionary cadre organizer and queen mother and holistic physician and head of the VICCC Cultural Center at the University of the Virgin Islands. So we're so happy to have her as co-host today. And we have two special guests. We have Baba Mukasa, Willie Ricks. For those of you who know Willie Ricks, Baba was one of the ones that actually introduced the term Black Power. He worked side by side with Kwame Ture in the Student National Coordinating Committee, the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee in the early days. And he also was an early organizer, newer of the first members that joined the All African People's Revolutionary Party. And so we have him to contribute to our discussion. So we want to welcome Baba Mukasa, Willie Ricks, who's joined us. And we also have our dear sister, Mohau Pheko, who is a longtime member of the Pan-Africanist Congress of Azania. But she's also a mother, a daughter, a farmer, a Pan-Africanist, a self-development consultant, fashion and textile designer that has worked as a diplomat, political and economic analyst, and has helped to train and develop the next generation of youth. So we're so happy to have Sister Mohau with us as well. So we want to welcome you all, and we don't know if we have time for questions or not, depending on how long we take to get through our slides and our presentation, but we welcome you all. Thank you for joining us. If you aren't able to catch this, we will have the program posted on Revolutionary African Women and on our YouTube page. So once again, welcome everyone, and let's get started. So one of the things we're, of course, always, grappling with is technology, but
it's not a grapple. We were just making sure that everybody got a chance to say their greetings. We figured we would hear a greeting from our illustrious elder, Baba Willie Ricks, before we just move forward, as well as from our illustrious sister, comrade of the PAC, Mohau. So we're getting it. We got you.
Okay. Any special shout outs or statements before we get started for Baba Mukasa and Sister Mohau?
If you want me to say something, yes, I started out with my sister from Tanzania. Me and brother Pheko, we ran together a little bit when we were working for the liberation of South Africa. And the first time I met Pheko, he walked up to me and started speaking Zulu. And I looked at him sort of funny. He said, "Oh, excuse me, I thought you were a Zulu. You look just like him." That was his line.
All right.
But we all work for Africa. We all work for Pan-Africanism. We all work for the liberation of Africa. And we all work on local movements and link them to the larger movements for the liberation of Africa. And we work for Pan-Africanism. We also work for scientific socialism and link us with all the socialist governments and socialist movements around the world also. So
that's right.
base, that's what I would say.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Madasi, Santawa, Nkosi. Thank you so much, Baba. So we'll get to you. And Sister Mohau, you want to open with some statements or greetings?
Izwele to all the brothers and sisters, and revolutionary greetings from Azania. It is such a privilege and an honor to be with revolutionary African women on this wonderful day when we remember the work of Brother Kwame Ture. And I'm really looking forward to the discussion and all of the conversation around
Yes, yes. So are we. Welcome, welcome. And thank you so much for joining us this evening.
I just wanted to add a comment that we just received in the chat. It reads as follows, because it's quite pertinent. Greetings and good afternoon to the elders and the hosts of this webinar. How is everyone? I am Ifa Bunmi Rhonda Valentine Charles from Trinidad, and I'm a cousin of Stokely Carmichael Kwame Ture. I just felt that would be just touching.
Welcome, cousin. So glad to have you. Thank you so much. We really appreciate you. And hopefully maybe you can get a moment somewhere in the program for some chat.
Yeah.
Yes, welcome.
And now, Sister Queen Grandmother Nana Moya Mzuri shall open up our platform with our presentation.
Yes, yes. Well, as we said, opening up, we started, a tradition of honoring Kwame Ture, as well as June 16th, which is Africa Youth Day, the day that the youth sparked a revolution in South Africa. And we did this just to set a revolutionary example and have perhaps an event that we can culminate with the youth in bringing forth the discussion of the role of the revolutionary youth in our movement. And so we are now trying to institutionalize this event. And so we decided, because Kwame was born in June as well, and he started as a youth, that we could both honor him and use him and so many of the youth that risked their lives for the struggle of the liberation of our people and around the world, to have a discussion about the revolutionary role of youth. But we want to give a special honor today, because we are limited in time, to talk about Kwame Ture, and maybe not to have just the general discussions that everyone is used to having, but to highlight some really pertinent points that don't get highlighted in our discussion around Kwame Ture as a revolutionary youth and organizer. So that's one of the key reasons and points that we're going to be pushing today.
I take it you would like that slide presentation put back on. I understand most of the time.
Yes, not having the slides, just kind of has me thinking, well, I can go on to talk about the role that, Kwame Ture has played. And, in that, we want to talk about the work that he has done, the role that he has played. So, we really want to highlight one of the things that we don't talk about often is how the party was formed. That the party was formed taken from the draft handbook of the Revolutionary Warfare that was written by Kwame Nkrumah. And it was from that draft handbook that a young Kwame Ture, at that time Stokely Carmichael, reviewed the handbook and decided that he wanted to be a part of this. But prior to that, he had organized with the SNCC, with the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, and also organized with many of the other organizations that were a part of the civil rights movement at that time, CORE, NAACP, SCLC, and the Black Panther Party. So one of the things we can say that we always want to emphasize is that Kwame Ture was always in organization, always in organization and believed in the revolutionary organization of our people and the liberation of our people. And that's one of the key legacies that we also always want to emulate and also share with the youth. So when we talk about Kwame taking on the assignment of building the All African People's Revolutionary Party and all of the various movements, he had an impact not only in the illegal settler colony called America, but also in the colony of England, in the Caribbean area, and throughout Africa. And so we want to talk a little bit about how we were recruited, what was the strategy, how we were trained, how Kwame influenced that, and the political education and our ideological training, why and how that was a priority and how that was emulated by Kwame. We see him here with Baba Sekou, and so we want to also recognize Baba Sekou, who stood as a part of his security oftentimes, and why ideology and Nkrumah's Terrorism was the foundation of the All African People's Revolutionary Party, as well as talking about why Africa is home, how we shifted our work from not just in America, but also seeing the core of the African Revolution as in Africa. So here we know the history of Kwame as a youth organizer with SNCC. And we can talk a little bit, if Baba Mukasa, can you jump in and just talk about a little bit of the work that you all did as youth as a part of SNCC and why that organization and why that work amongst the masses was so important, the 6 or 7 years that y'all worked with SNCC. Can you talk a little bit about that, Baba?
Yes, a little bit. Well, Kwame and I, we met probably during the sit-in movement, freedom ride movement, when we was under apartheid, going in the back doors and saying yes, sir, and working the sharecroppers not being paid and being lynched and killed and murdered like we're being today. And when we went to face that, we had sit-in movements and we went to jails and stuff like that. And then we were pulled together by a woman named Ella Baker and told us to get organized. And she also pulled together Dr. King and Ralph Abernathy and Y.T. Walker when they were young in the movement. They had 3 people in the organization, and Ella Baker told them they needed a staff, and she pulled them together, organized their office, organized their staff, and build the organization, helped build the organization for them. And then she had Martin King to pay about $800-900 for us to have call all the students together. And we formed the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. And we formed the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. We were organizers and we used our movement to organize. And that we were not leaders, but organizers. And when we went into the Deep South to organize, we were met with bombs, guns, assassinations, and stuff like that. But once we got involved in public accommodations and just desegregation and all the backdoor stuff that they were doing to us, we fought for the right to vote and those kinds of things, and the right to be human beings. But we were bombed, killed, assassinated, and I could name a dozen people that died beside us. And then after so many killings and bombings and whatever, by 1965, we started the Black Panther Party in Alabama. And at that point, we had to pick up guns because so many people were being assassinated and killed, and we were under so much of a threat. So in Lowndes County, we picked up guns, and our symbol was the Black Panther, and we became known as the Black Panther Party. But also 1965 was very significant because that's when we officially went to the United Nations, kicked the door down at the South African embassy, and went into the embassy and whooped the butts of the people that was running the embassy. We fought them, the ambassador, secretary, we whooped them all. And they put us in jail in New York, but we definitely linked our movement with South Africa. And at that point, that's when Mary McKeever called, sneak people in at a performance that she was doing. Her and Belafonte and Sidney Poitier got us out of jail and called us at a performance and invited us and made us special guests for her program. But at that point, we linked our movement with the movement in Southern Africa. We began to talk about freedom of the people in South Africa, Sobukwe, Mandela at that time, and others, and began to talk about the same condition that we were facing here in the South or here in the United States. We were also facing those conditions in South Africa. And at that time, when we hit them with Black Power, we
and what does that mean? I mean, why did you hit them with Black Power? Why was that a call? Why was that rally for a call for Black Power? Why was that so important?
Well, it was the same really as when the people in Kenya hit them with Uhuru. Zimbabwe said Pamberi na Shimaringa. The people in South Africa, Tanzania said Amanda, Amanda. These are just freedom calls. And all of it means basically the same thing. So out of freedom struggles, you have a freedom call. So that was a freedom call. And we said Black Power, that linked us with all the liberation movements across Africa. It linked us with every, Kwame Nkrumah's talked about Black Power. We linked it with the movement in the Congo and linked it with South Africa, and all our movements became one major movement. So Black Power
we weren't
was
just for civil rights now, we for liberation.
Huh?
So we weren't just for civil rights at that point. Now we're saying we for liberation. We want freedom.
Of course, we were educated to come to that, because once we saw that wasn't no rights and whatever, but as we got educated, we started out talking about that, but as we got educated, we began to see that Africa, and when we began to see Africa, they began to teach us that Africa is the richest land in the world. Then they began to talk about the great education, the empires, kingdoms, and knowledge that Africa possessed for thousands of years before colonialism and imperialism, and then talked about all the growth in the land of Africa and all that. So we began to see that out of all the different struggles that we were getting involved in, rather than South America, Trinidad, any other areas in the world, that all of us had a common denominator, and that common denominator was Africa. And so when these people when Black Power inspired the people in Trinidad, and they built a movement and a liberation movement in Trinidad, and they give the credit to the Black Power movement, but all of them linked with Black Power, because Black Power was no joke, because at that time we were burning down the cities, throwing firebombs, standing up with the Vietnamese people, fighting against the United States and its imperialist policies in Vietnam. But when we linked to that, Ho Chi Minh, who had been a follower of Marcus Garvey, told Kwame that your fight is in Africa, and pointed us toward Africa. And he immediately went to Africa and linked up with Kwame Nkrumah, Sekou Touré, and all the different liberation movements there. And they were automatically linked up with all the liberation movements and given technical, financial, military, and whatever support that these movements needed in South Africa, Angola, Mozambique, Zimbabwe, Kenya, and wherever the movement was taking place. Also in Egypt, Abdul Nasser and all of those guys. So our movements began to link. So we had a worldwide Black Power movement, and that began to be interpreted to Pan-Africanism. And then when we started talking about freedom and liberation, it was Fidel Castro that brought us in, and Ho Chi Minh began to let us see that we was fighting against imperialism, we were fighting against colonialism, and we began to understand those terms, study those terms, and see what they were, and how these people settled on other people's land, kill them, rob them of their culture, destroy their history, destroy their roots, and whatever, and rape them for all the resources. In Africa's case, they even raped us for all the people, brought us and scattered us all over the world. Here in this place called the United States, and in so-called America, they went and committed mass genocide on the people. So we saw the crimes of imperialism and colonialism, and we tried to link our movements together and start, not only were we burning down the cities here, but we joined in with Angola, Zimbabwe, Mozambique, Guinea-Bissau, and we joined in with those movements and began to fight with these people. And our movements became a worldwide movement. And by Kwame linking with Miriam Makeba and them going to Guinea, Sekou Touré now become a personality and a spokesman for our movement. And it pointed us more toward Kwame Nkrumah, even though we were pointing toward Kwame Nkrumah before. And believe it or not, I was riding in a car with John Lewis when Kwame Nkrumah was overthrown. And John Lewis' expression was, "Oh my God, they have overturned Kwame Nkrumah." So Kwame Nkrumah was a person, yeah. And so Kwame Nkrumah was a personality inside the SNCC. It was Jim Foreman that organized and wanted us to, when we put the young men on the street as Black Panthers, they came to us because they formed chapters. We put them on the streets for them to organize in the city, the gangs and whatever. And one of the things in the first book that we gave them and that we used was Kwame Nkrumah's little black book. And we began to put the little black book out. And also they began to pick up the little red book from Mao Zedong in China. And so our movements began to internationally look good to us. And we also linked with Mao Zedong, Ho Chi Minh, and Kim Il-sung in North Korea. But all the liberation movements in the world began to come together and support as one. And our number one enemy was the United States. So we had to go and teach people. They had made us afraid of the word Black. People were damn just for calling each other Black. We had to educate them on that. We had to educate our women that we shouldn't discriminate on them because one dog, one light. We should educate our women that they shouldn't be ashamed of their hair, their nose, their lips, their skin. And we had to make people know that Africa was not a bad word and that Africa was not a jungle and that we were African people and we were not Americans, we were not niggers, we were not all these things that colonialism had called us. And our movement began to link together and we began to show people the beauty of Africa. And we went across the country, across the world, teaching people of the beauty of Africa. And we linked up with all the liberation movements and struggles. And when Steve Biko died, my wife was one of the first people to announce to the United States. She made a leaflet and we passed it out on the campus. Steve Biko has been married, I think it was about 1978, something like that. And we made a leaflet and passed it out on the college campus at Spelman College, telling kids about Steve Biko. And the reason I remember passing that leaflet out, she misspelled Spelman College's name, and the kids, they wasn't more concerned about Steve Biko. They said, "You done misspelled Spelman College's name." And we had to explain to them that Steve Biko was a little more important. But we linked Steve Biko up and we linked our movement up and we saw our movement as one. And everywhere in Africa where they were fighting, we provided material support to Angola, Mozambique, Zimbabwe, and even sent some fighters down into Zimbabwe, Mozambique, and whatever. We organized an African organization, one of the first base African organizations that was more concentrated. After was a group called SABU. It was a student organization for Black unity, and it did nothing but write about African liberation movement.
Let me repeat that. SOBU, SOBU, right?
Yeah, and
right.
And
we need to look that up.
Yeah, and we organized that, and we linked up with Biko's organization inside of South Africa, but then we linked up with all the different liberation movements, and we began to try to help get them guns, money, and Eritrea, and we had to educate people about the fight in South Africa, in Southern Africa, or in Africa, because there was no outlet and nobody was talking about it, news media, propaganda, white colonialism. So they didn't talk about those kind of movements, but we concentrated on it. And in 1972, we called together about, I guess, 50, 60,000 people in Washington, D.C. for Africa Liberation Day in 1972. And then we began to have these liberation days and make everybody put Africa in. As a matter of fact, in 1966, 67, when we had the first rebellion to burn down cities, students, their first rebellion when they started fighting in the streets, saying Black Power, we demanded that the students go back to these white schools and organize African student unions, Black student unions. And then we told the students, go take over the administration buildings in any way you're going, burn them down, do whatever you have to do, but demand that they put Africa in these schools. And that's how you got the birth of African studies and African history and all that. Before then, they were using all colonial white books and stuff like that. So
Right.
we made
Now,
them
Baba,
feel.
let me ask you something right quick. Because I have heard some organizers from SNCC say that Kwame abandoned, the Afro-American struggle. What do you say about that? Because once we identify that we are African, we're now one struggle. But I've heard some organizers who are SNCC saying that Kwame abandoned the Afro-American struggle. What would you say about that?
Well, I've heard people said, I never heard a SNCC person say that too much, I don't think. But
Yeah,
I've heard people
I
say
heard
it.
that.
And that we did abandon the Afro-American study and said it's an African struggle and it's one worldwide struggle. And this African-American stuff is nonsense. And our fight is for the liberation and unification of Africa. Our fight is for Pan-Africanism. And Fidel made it clear, and Ho Chi Minh and Mao made it clear that our fight is for socialism. And so
Right.
when we got rid of all that nonsense, we had to whoop them down. We had to whoop these Uncle Tom, we had to beat them down. And Kwame used to beat them down ideologically. And he started talking about African movements and liberation, and he would whoop them down, or he whooped them. And we fought and had Kwame speaking at maybe 3, 4, 5 colleges a day, crowds, groups, and whatever. But we linked our movement with Africa, and that we made people see that you could never be free unless you have a land, unless you have a country, and
That's
you
right.
have to have an ideology, because these folks have totally corrupted our minds and made us go backwards when we were moving forward for so many thousands of years. They have robbed us of our history, of our great kingdoms and empires and universities and all the things, the different knowledge that each tribe in Africa represented. They erased all of that and made us think that we just started on a slave ship and all that. So to get our people to the stage that we are today, believe me, it was a lot of work just in terms of erasing a lot of stuff, even though a lot of stuff is there. But we had to link our people, link our movements, and it didn't come easy. And that we many soldiers and times and hours fought. We put together freedom schools. We put together study groups, work study groups, and all kind of forces. And we linked and had many meetings with the ANC, PAC, Black Conscious Movement, Angola, Augusta NATO, and the PAIGC, and we met with Amilcar Cabral and PAIGC, some Limo in Southern Africa. We met with Kwame Nkrumah, Sekou Toure, and Madiba Keita, the Mau Mau, Odinga Oginga, and our movements began to come together, and we began to talk about that Pan-Africanism, and we have just studied to link all the different. We tried to link all the governments together, but many of them end up being and corrupted governments that were set up, a coup d'etat, and African leaders being assassinated and murdered by French colonialism or French imperialism, and British and German and the United States have assassinated all the different strong leaders that we have coming up, and they continue to assassinate them. And they got African and armies all over Africa today preparing for war, because they know they would have to defend and fight for the natural resources of Africa in order for imperialism to flourish. Every country in the world is on Africa's welfare.
That's right. Speaking of that, Baba, and thank you so much for sharing that powerful history. You went through so many of our slides. We have Sister Mohau on from Pan-Africanist Congress, and you talk about how Kwame and the movement and leaders like yourselves and organizers help link the movement and link us all together. Sister Mohau, can you speak about that link and that connection and working with Kwame and working with the Pan-Africanist organizers and how Pan-Africanism began to develop and expand on the continent as well as through the diaspora?
And before she said that, I would like to say that we merged our movement with the Pan-African Congress, and that was no different than the APRP and the Pan-African Congress. That was a girl in Americus, Georgia, and that she was around the movement when we was in Sumter County, Georgia. I want y'all to Google Americus, Georgia movement, and that was a young girl there, and I'd never seen her again. But then she was a lady that became the spokesman for the Pan-African movement. Her name was Betty, I can't think of her name, her last name, and she had a Zulu name, and that she became the leader of that movement. And I was around her every day with the Pan-African movement and everybody, but she led the Pan-Africanist movement, and I knew she was some kin to Mary Makeba. She's from South Africa and from Tanzania. She taught us about Tanzania. She did everything for the liberation movement. All the men in the Pan-African movement looked up to her, and she gave the orders and directed the movement. And then she died. And when she died,
yes,
they buried her in Americus, Georgia. And when I got to Americus, Georgia, come to find out she was born in Americus, Georgia, lived in Americus, Georgia, and she had joined the Pan-African movement and lived as a Pan-Africanist and lived as an African and led the PAC. Her name was Betty, I can't think of her name, but she was part of that. She wanted to introduce me to Pokella.
Yes, Sister Mohau, can you jump in? Have you heard of the Sister Betty as well? And talk about the work of expanding, going from Black Power to the connection of Pan-Africanism and expanding on that.
It could
and
be
the contribution that Kwame made in terms of developing the unity, and those other Pan-Africanists as well, developing this stronger Pan-African unity.
It's very significant. I think, first of all, the first thing that I want to say is that when the PAC was launched, after breaking away from the 1912 ANC, it was Kwame Nkrumah who actually sent the funding to Sobukwe to launch this new Pan-Africanist movement here.
Are we losing sound?
I can hear.
I can hear you, but I'm not hearing Mohau. And she
maybe she lost sound.
Okay, we'll just wait for her to chime in as soon as she returns.
But yes, I think
I just wanted to add a moment.
Yes.
Baba Mukasa, in the future, when I know that you're going to be our most regal, informative guest, there will be no PowerPoint, okay? I feel like you were with us preparing this PowerPoint presentation because you went through each slide with even extra. So I just needed you to know that we're very grateful to be able to have not only what we researched and gathered from texts and articles and literature, but to have the living example of who is able to bring that kind of information to us. So I'm very, I just want to let you know how grateful we are.
Yes, and Dr. Chin, jump in to also talk about, because a part of the organizing as well is we had the Sammy Young Student Organizing Brigade, and the party started bringing youth, just like Baba Mukasa and Sekou and a number of organizers came to Africa. Is that Sister Mohau who returned?
Yeah. Is that you? Yes, give thanks. Okay, great. Go right ahead.
Yeah, I was saying that it was Kwame Nkrumah who, in fact, funded the launching of the Pan-Africanist Congress of Azania when they broke away from the ANC. So already at the very beginning, 1959, 1960, there is already a very strong connection between the PAC and what was happening in Nkrumah's Ghana. But I also want to pick up another very important landmark. In June 1966 is when Brother Kwame Ture coins or globalizes Black Power as an important slogan. It is in June, 10 years later, June 1976, here in Azania, where the Soweto uprising begins, with the students demanding to be taught not only just in Afrikaans, but to be taught in a language that they can use to communicate with, but to also refuse to be trained just to be laborers. And it was the Soweto uprising is absolutely critical, because it is not only just the Pan-Africanist Congress of Azania with Uncle Zephaniah Mutuping, who are in the lead. It's also the Black Consciousness Movement with Stephen Biko, who are also agitating and mobilizing around this. And it is not just a refusal to learn education. It is, again, a fight to demand that African people can be creators of knowledge. And this is really fundamental. We see it today here in Azania, where students are fighting for fees to fall at university, secondary, and primary school. This is fundamental again. Again, it is beginning to demand the decolonization of education. Kwame Ture was absolutely strong on the issues of knowledge production, how we use knowledge, how we acquire knowledge, and how we use knowledge to take action. I had the privilege of meeting Brother Kwame Ture in 1980 at Indiana University as a very young girl. And I just saw this brash, very eloquent speaker who came to our campus through the Black Student Organization those days at Indiana University. And the fact that he was speaking to us as youth, speaking to us as people who can mobilize the future, mobilize and liberate the mind. That came out very, very strongly. The issue of making sure that people liberate their minds, know where you come from, know who you are, know that you are a producer of knowledge, and that Africa has been a producer of knowledge for generations, and that this was not new. And this is a message that we need to send to youth today, that they are the generators of knowledge. We have to begin to decolonize the mind. This is fundamental. And what Kwame Ture started through the study groups, I was part of the study groups. I was in Mauena's study group as well. And it was very important. Here I was an Azanian in the United States of America. And yet here was this movement, the All African People's Revolutionary Party, mobilizing, bringing us together as African people, continuing to connect our struggles, whether it was Guinea, whether it was Mozambique, Angola, Zimbabwe, South Africa. All of these struggles were one struggle. And this is something that was very, very critical for us, and something that I think we should continue to push, continue to find connecting points with. We are one people. We are one people.
Yes, yes. And another thing that I know that Kwame in particular, but the Central Committee and the party began talking about is our ideology, is linking our ideologies. Can you speak a bit about that? Because I know that Kwame was saying, claim your ideology, claim your African ideology. What were the discussions going on in terms of that?
Listen, the discussions that were going on around this was the importance of the United States of Africa. It seems like, you know, some pipe dream or some esoteric thing that can never happen. But I think what was important about that is how do we come together and put building blocks around this United States of Africa? How do we create a common foreign policy? How do we bring Africans all over the world to come in? Because there was a pool of skills, for example, that was needed to begin building these liberated countries here on the African continent as they become liberated. We needed that skills pool. We must never forget that with slavery, we lost some of the best human resources that this continent has ever seen. And we need that skills base to come home. So these were very, very important, because we realized that the challenges of developing and building a country that would really speak to the aspirations of the African people was absolutely significant. And as we have seen, that vision, had it really taken root and taken off in the way that it should be, Africa would not be where it is today, relying on Western powers, losing their own confidence in who they are, losing confidence in their ability to create policies that actually speak to the dreams and the aspirations of the African people. So it was very important. The discussions also centered around the economy, because you'll remember, just as in Ghana and almost every country where the colonizers left the country, they not only left debt, the same thing here in Azania, they left a huge debt for us, an odious debt, in fact, and in some countries burned down institutions, completely burned down institutions. So it was absolutely fundamental for us to come together and decide on economic policy, decide on social policy based on the principles of Pan-Africanism, and bringing together the African countries as one entity in building a continent and a people that could rely upon each other, trade with each other, share skills with each other as one strong continent that is prepared to confront the colonial powers together. We haven't seen this. We have not seen this. This is still our fight. This is still something that we have to fundamentally engage and interrogate the manner in which we are building the state here on the African continent. What kind of state is it that would be corrupt? What kind of state is it that would sell its own resources to outsiders and not develop these resources for its own people? What kind of states would demand that people pay for education? This was not Nkrumah's dream. This was not Sobukwe's dream. This was not Touré's dream. How do we develop countries in this manner? So the conversations are absolutely paramount. We have to continue having these conversations, but we have to also recognize the deep challenges that are faced in terms of how states are created outside the ideology of Pan-Africanism, the ideology of uniting, of bringing our policy and harmonizing our currencies, harmonizing our defense forces. Absolutely fundamental. Look at what has happened in Mozambique now with all these terrorist groups going in after the gas in northern Mozambique. And seemingly all these Southern African heads of state impotent, absolutely impotent in terms of confronting these sorts of issues because we are not harmonized in our
Yes.
defense as an
Yes.
African people. And these are
Yes.
the things that Brother Kwame Ture spoke about. These are the fundamental issues that we have to come around and continue conversing, but not only conversing, but really rebuilding a state that reflects the dreams and the aspirations of the African people.
Yes, thank you so much, sister. And you know, you can see the harmony in the ideology and concepts of Sobukwe and of Nkrumah that influenced the Kwame Tures and the Mukasas and the Mawinas and all those cadres that came along, including yourself and all of that, and even the works of your father, Dr. Pheko. As we, you know, have read him, and I was, you know, I picked up a book that had David Dubé or something, a name. He was, but again, the ideologies were united. The ideologies were there was a symbiosis, a connection between them. And I think that is the kind of work we need to continue to build. So thank you so much for that contribution. Another thing we haven't talked about, but I want Dr. Chin to jump in because her circle, and particularly for young sisters to be a part of this movement, Kwame was very, very committed to building the All African Women's Revolutionary Union and empowering us to organize our women's wing. This was the destiny. Every revolutionary organization had a women's wing, and he was very supportive in that. And so I want Dr. Chin, can you jump in and talk a little bit about that? And I know, Sister Mohau, you worked a lot with Sister Mawina and Sister Imani and Sister Tumika. And this is the kind of courage that we mustered up, that we identified in ourselves to be able to organize, to move to the African continent. So Dr. Chin, can you talk a little bit about, I know you have a slide there of your circle going to Burkina Faso. Talk a little bit about Kwame's impact on building the AWRU, and how were you all empowered to make that trip to Burkina Faso, and what were some of the experiences?
Okay, so greetings, Africans. First and foremost, I would have to say, for those that do remember or have read and studied the work of our ever so memorable ancestor, Kwame Ture, it wasn't like you had a choice once you were in the All African People's Revolutionary Party and working within the All African Women's Revolutionary Union in its early years. It was more of, if you say that you're a revolutionary and you're going to be in this organization, then there are going to be international assignments. So whether you were, because at that particular time I was in grad school, and there were several members of our circle, and it's interesting, all of us have remained inside of the organization and or have built other organizations. So my second to favorite photograph, which you'll notice is going to make you laugh. I love the memory that Kwame shared with us, the justification of what was going on in places like Mozambique, as well as in places like Zimbabwe, and keeping us connected to, you know, the various revolutionary organizations, what was going on in Azania, correcting us so we just didn't always say South Africa, that we would say Azania, and that we would show that respect for the Pan-Africanist thrust of the Pan-Africanist organizations, the PAC, and also working with those organizations like AZAPO and so forth, reminding us to engage with what was happening in Guinea-Conakry. Even if some of us traveled to Guinea-Conakry, we're not proficient in French and had to become proficient like in 7 days or not be able to function. So the photograph that you'll see, and I don't think I still smile like that. I just don't smile like that, because it was beyond anything that I could speak to in any language, to have the honor and opportunity between 84, 85, and up to 87, because in my case, I had intended to return and stay. So that's another, we don't have time for that. But I just wanted to highlight when we went over as a cadre circle in 1985, I had a choice, go to my graduation for grad school or get on the plane 2 days before and go with my cadre circle to Burkina Faso. Obviously, that was the choice that I chose because it gave us an opportunity. We learned about electrical work, plumbing, setting up clinics, building schools, working with children. I was a very young midwife in that period, learning more about midwifery, being able to help our sisters and brothers right on the ground. So with all of our intellectual training, we were bringing that resource collectively. And that's what Kwame really encouraged us to do. It was not, like I said, it was not a will you go? It is, this is what is going to be taking place. These are the independence activities that are happening. These are the assignments that will take place. You're revolutionary, right? So let we go. It went from the conversation of what we could do and which conference we were going to be engaged in, which seminar or webinar, well, that then not a webinar, but seminar or activity, to what are you prepared to do to get on the ground. Make sure you go with a tent, something to sleep on, something that resembles bedding. You'll be fine. And that's how that energy went. It was to encourage us because the AAWRU in that period was just coming to 5 years. So the intention was to keep us moving as cadre, to keep us moving in a force so that we were not so much fearless, we were mindful of what was going on around and that there were all of these threats of assassination or coup d'etat, etc., but to make sure that we understood not only the All African People's Revolutionary Party's ideological line and positions on these types of affairs, also seeing the layer and the importance of the All African Women's Revolutionary Union, and also being aware that the All African People's Revolutionary Army, which wasn't developed per se, but that we had to be aware of things like executive security protection and so forth. So yes, Kwame had a significant impact on what I have been able to sustain inside of the revolutionary pathway that I've chosen in this lifespan. Because it's not so much a choice. This is what you're supposed to do.
Exactly.
So doing the work.
Exactly.
Doing the work. But you can tell from that smile.
You enjoyed every bit of that work, right?
Every second, every morning jog, every
Right.
assignment, to be given an assignment from someone as honorable as President Thomas Sankara was, yes, it was an honor and a privilege.
Yes. And this is and again, the beauty of this is that Kwame was the inspiration because he lived this work, and those cadre, not just Kwame, but the cadre that were building the AAPRP, that was helping to expand that, they inspired us. And regardless, whether we're male, female, or whatever, it was get out and organize. You understand the ideology, you understand the objective, you understand the political strategy, go out and organize. And so it was so inspiring. Yes, yes. And one of the one thing that a note, and I didn't see this until this morning, because Kwame was also a husband and a father. And his eldest son, Bokar, I met him and his mother, Mariatu, when I spent my last week with Sister Mawina, the year she made a transition in New York, and when she was in New York before she came to the Gambia, and I met them there, and Sister Mariatu recently made her transition, so we want to acknowledge her as well as Sister Mariam Makiba, but we also want to give our condolences to Brother Bokar for the passing of his mother, and to, I'm sure we'll be working on, if we haven't already, sent revolutionary salutations and condolences to the family. But we want to acknowledge that and say that as well, that Kwame was a revolutionary example in terms of being a father. I know, a brother, because we would hear from his sisters and we would hear from his cousins. And I know that me, as always having big brothers, I could always call on Mukasa, and I still do. I could call on Kwame. I could call on Elder David Brothers, that they were always supportive and inspiring. And so Kwame represented the revolutionary spirit of those, warriors, both female and male, those warriors that led the African Revolution, and that are committed to our people, committed to the revolution and unity and liberation of our people and all indigenous people. We could talk about his work with Cuba, with Venezuela, with Nicaragua, because I know Baba Mukasa could go on and on about his work in Nicaragua, and that will be for another program. But we just want to, really highlight some of this critical work and contributions that Kwame made, and that he spent the majority of his life. He was in the All African People's Revolutionary Party for 30 years, longer than any organization. And so, the fact that the movements today, the civil rights movements and such, will only highlight his period in SNCC and maybe a little blip in the Black Panther Party, the majority of his life was building Pan-Africanism. And I think, the intent is to diminish the work of Pan-Africanism and highlight civil rights. But the reality is the present and the past and the future is Pan-Africanism, the total liberation and unification of Africa and all of her peoples under scientific socialism. And as Sister Mohau said so eloquently, is that we won't have a future until we have this unity, until we're organized, until we're committed, the way Kwame Ture and those other African revolutionaries like Baba Mukasa and Mauna and all of those who fought and died on the ground and elsewhere for the liberation of our people. So just to get closing comments, if we can, from Baba Mukasa, from Sister Mohau, and yourself, Dr. Chin.
I would just say that there are many of our African brothers and sisters that's fighting now, like in Guinea-Bissau. They fight for their life every day, and it's a very organized country, the PAIGC. They continue to be on the battlefield, and they continue to be oppressed by neo-colonialism, military, and foreign elements, United States, France, or whoever is involved in supporting those neo-colonial Portosara, and we see the death and destruction of our brothers and sisters in the Congo, and the crimes that France continues to commit all over Africa, with the backing of the United States in place in armies and relationship with armies all over Africa. And we must prepare for organizations to organize and be prepared to fight. And we have to bring together all our little brothers that call themselves gang, little organizations, and make them a Pan-Africanist army for the liberation and unification of Africa. And also, I'd like to say that I was down in Toko, down in Trinidad, organizing and had a great time in Trinidad. And I met all of Kwame's family, friends, and what have you. And it was a very great experience in Trinidad. I did learn why Kwame liked to eat so much, because the food was so good in Trinidad. I said, oh, that's what it is. And that, but anyway, I thank you very much for inviting me to be part of a great meeting like this. Thank you, Africans. Thank all of you and all the freedom fighters that's gone, that's there, and that's coming.
That's
Long
right.
live Africa.
Uhuru.
Uhuru.
Uhuru. Easy led to. And a special welcome for our brother Alpha, Alpha Yaya, who just joined us, one of Kwame's sons. So we want to just first thank you, Baba Mukasa, for all your work that you continue to do, that you continue to support us and guide us and lead us, and whatever we call, you answer. And so we want to thank you. And of course, you know how much I appreciate you forever and ever and ever. And Sister Mohau, any closing statements before we ask Dr. Chin and Brother Alpha Yaya to say a few statements just quickly before we close? Sister Mohau?
Firstly, just to thank you so much for the opportunity to be on a panel like this. These sorts of meetings are absolutely critical now, very critical in connecting the work that has been done to the work that needs to be done. And as Baba Dada has said, it's absolutely fundamental for us to continue to organize, to recruit the young in particular. But it's important for them to know people like Brother Kwame Ture, Nkrumah, Sobukwe, and the work that has been done there. And we need new tools, tools of analysis, new tools of fighting back. But the one thing we must never forget to do is to continue the fight. Izwe lethu.
Yes, Izwe lethu, Africa. Brother Alpha Yaya, before Sister Dr. Chin closes, can you just say a few words? We're honoring Kwame Ture, our big brother, uncle, comrade, coordinator, revolutionary ancestor. We just want to hear just a few closing words, if you could. We gave condolences, and we're going to send out something for Sister Mariatu. But we just want to, since family is here, we want, if you could just say a few words really quickly. If you can't, then we'll ask Dr. Chin to close us out.
Hello.
Okay.
Yes.
Greetings to all elders on this platform and a good afternoon to everyone. This is Ifabumi Ronda, one of Kwame Ture's cousins.
Yes, welcome.
Resident here in Trinidad. Ready for the revolution.
Ready for the revolution.
It will never die.
That's
Black
right.
power to the people. My cousin spirit lives on through each and every one of us, because through me, other members of the family are becoming closer to Kwame in his transition state of ancestorship. I want to thank you all for the work that you are doing. Other family members were supposed to have joined in, but I guess none of them are as committed as I am to the revolution. I am in touch with Alpha, Kwame's younger son, who was 4 years old at the time of Kwame's death. Not death, but transition. And I am also in touch with Kwame's mother, right? I thought that Alpha would have been able to tune in, but unfortunately he has not been. Once again, anything you all are having concerning Kwame Ture, my dear ancestor, Stokely Carmichael, please keep me informed.
Absolutely.
Beforehand, so that I can inform the other members of the family so that we could all be tuned in. Next time I'll try to be on video, but my name is Ifabumi Ronda Valentine Charles. I am easily accessible on Facebook, right? So feel free to contact me.
We will, sister, we will.
I thank you all kindly.
So much.
I thought that Brother David Mohammed of the Nation of Islam, who has a center dedicated to Kwame Ture in Trinidad, I thought he might have been able to join in together with his wife, Sister Roxanne Mohammed, but they haven't been able to make it. We only have Brother Adeyemi Hines, who is here present. Oh, Alpha Yaya Ture is on.
Yes, he is. I asked him to unmute, but he may be having technical difficulties and cannot.
Right. Yes.
But this is not the last. This isn't the end. There's going to be another program tomorrow. And we're going to continue to do this work and highlight not only his work, but to inspire the next generation. So we will be in touch. Yes.
So send me the link.
Yes.
And I will join in.
Yes. Excellent. Excellent. Thank you so much, sister. We really appreciate your calling in.
Let me give a shout out to my cousin Alpha Yaya. This is your cousin Ifabumi here, right? I love you all. Thank you so much. Send me the link for tomorrow, please. Please don't forget me.
No, we won't. We won't, sister.
Thank
Sister.
you.
Yes. Dr. Chin, some closing comments?
Okay, on the closing comment portion, I'm going to put up a visual of the event that the All African People's Revolutionary Party is hosting on Revolutionary Reflections tomorrow on the 27th on Black Power Media. So you can just go to blackpowermedia.com and be able to watch that program 8 a.m. Pacific, 11 a.m. Eastern, and the Skitter at 11.
Yes.
Got
11 a.m. Eastern and 3 p.m. UTC.
Yeah, UTC. So that way persons can navigate and see that. And also what one of our colleagues shared here with us as well was the program that's being hosted. And I can speak to being present and working with the various activities that are part of the Pan-African Festival of TNT that has been ongoing. So this launch of the 2021 Kwame Ture Memorial Lecture Series with distinguished emeritus, make sure I correct myself, Professor Emeritus Dr. Rupert Lewis, should be quite informative. And that's also going to be available on Zoom, Facebook, etc. tomorrow evening, June 27th. So just so the persons are familiar with that. My closing comments are really just a vote of significant thanks and deep appreciation for having you present, Baba Mukasa. I am, and you still here. I'm just like, I'm giving thanks. Still here. You're still here.
Fight like him.
That's what I'm saying.
Right.
Fight like hell. I'm like, dang, you got like so much energy. So it is very important for those of us that are tad younger to not lose our fight, not lose that revolutionary engagement, not be afraid of unity and liberation and self-determination and all that comes with that. And you put that so eloquently in terms of your action. And again, next time I gonna call you before we finish the PowerPoint, because I'm just saying, I'm just saying, and I want the persons to know. And we had no preview before. So Baba just came and spoke, and I'm giving thanks that we followed the chronology that to a certain extent, but you gave us more details. So for that, we're very grateful, very grateful, very grateful. Yes. And to you, Sister Queen Mohau, I'm like, when I go on back to South Africa, I like, wait, you say all this stuff about what's going on, but there's a lot of layers to how important it is for us to stay linked, connected, unified, supportive. So whatever, my revolutionary African sister, just know we're there. For those that did not understand that little shift to the Caribbean twang, when we said that means we're there. We're there with you. You understand? So it's like definitely forward ever. It's always a joy and a privilege to be with my most beloved sister who keeps my toes moving. So you organize the program and make sure all the technology is operational, keep to date on all the archival data, and make sure that it's properly marketed and the media is on point. So give thanks, Nana, Moya, and Zoe.
Yes, and we will look forward to Pan-African Women's Day done by the All-African Women's Revolutionary Union, July 31st and August 21st. And we will be having the women of PAC involved in both. We've been working with Sisters Andiswa, and we'll continue to build on that and make sure that we are working together, united. We'll have Udumu as well in Guinea-Bissau. So we are continuing the work of Kwame Ture and Mawina, Elder David Brothers, all those comrades, as well as those that are still here, like Baba Mukasa. The work continues, the struggle continues until unity and liberation is ours, for sure. Izwiletu, Africa. Forward ever, backwards never. We remain ready for the revolution.
Amandla.
Where to?
Is a way to.
Africa.
Africa.
Long live the revolution.
Thank you so much.